Welcome back to the Air Crown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice little Saturday morning over here from a very sunny Dubai. A very, very sunny Dubai, in fact. Anyways, with that in mind, waking up nice and early, finally getting a good night of sleep, so starting to feel normal once again, and woke up nice and early to check out the price action. So I wanted to record a video right now. Perhaps I'll record another one later if it's relevant, if price action does move, but I wanted to talk about what this means for the next, probably for the next few weeks now that we have gotten this little trap-ola that we spoke about from the last couple days, and in this general move that we've been looking for the past couple weeks, actually. So with that in mind, let's start it off over here on the Crown Chain application. Oh yeah, by the way, no face camera right now as well. It's actually in the dead of morning, so I figured probably not the best time. It would just look like one of those crazy cell phone pictures anyways. So first things first, start off over here on the Crown Trading application. We see several things that are of interest right now, specifically the global open interest yet again. So this was one of the key portions in the last few days here, or realistically in the last couple weeks here, suggesting that Bitcoin very likely tries higher before potentially going lower. And when I say potentially going lower, I do not mean to say that it is definitely going lower. I'm just saying that there will be a setup potentially later, probably not at least for like another couple weeks. If it's going to present itself, that would be a little bit concerning. But for right now, this is kind of what we want to be seeing. And we do see that global open interest has actually taken a humongous leg up, massive leg up, almost, or actually not almost, but more than $1.25 billion in just the last 24 hours, which is certainly significant. So this move, I do want to keep an eye on the global open interest, because if that does get above specifically, 13, 14 billion-ish region, and we start to see Bitcoin show weakness and especially start to print a lower high compared to the $45,000 prior lower high, that would be rather concerning for the long term. But until that happens, it's just a potential situation, something to be aware of. But for right now, the path of least resistance is to the upside. Also, fear and greed index still coming in from very low levels as well. So I do look at that as still supportive of continuation on this rally. And on top of that, the global funding rates are actually slightly negative. Now, this is obviously not anything too concerning if you are holding shorts, but once Bitcoin does put in about a, $7,000 move or $8,000 move now off the lows, that is going to start to really add up. For the past 2.5 weeks now, we've seen very consistent negative rates. So shorts have been paying for those positions. Now they're, especially the later shorts are, they're probably underwater. And for the prior shorts, they're probably closing their position, seeing as we did hit the monthly 21 just about a week ago. So with that in mind, I do suspect that we're going to see a lot of covering and potentially a bit of a liquidation party for the late shorters in this case. On top of that, very, very short-term funding rates, actually ever so slightly positive, but not anything too concerning right there. Again, the big focus is on the totality of the last 2.5 weeks, where it was consistently negative, as that does add up over time, and a little bit of a liquidation party going on over here. Well, not anything too crazy to be speaking about. So let's now get into the price action charts immediately here. I do want to make these videos a little bit more shorter, just because I might throw another one up later if it is relevant. But for right now, looking at the 4-hour, we did obviously get the criteria met for that the bear trappy situation. In this case, we saw an hourly close above our critical region right here, and that was the 0.618 Fibonacci retracement in this case. And then we hit our first target right in the blue box territory right here, also the 1.618 Fibonacci extension. And while this probably does present a bit of a short-term pullback, perhaps over the weekend that'd be a great time for such price action activity. I do not think that things stop here at all. I mean, not that they necessarily stop here like on a general, on a general trend basis, that is. So generally speaking, whilst I could be looking for a move back down to back test, maybe even just slightly below $40,000, that's completely fair game. I am now looking for this move to very likely extend over the following weeks, somewhere between about 43.5 to very likely $44,500 right here. Realistically, looking a little bit more around this region, in line with that last major high from the 13th of January, actually. And what's also very impressive about this is that we're seeing this move being populated off of very low volatility reads. So we got all the way down to single-digit percentiles from yesterday and the day prior's price action, and now expanding off those lows. So this wasn't exactly, once we got actual closures, as low as what we saw in January before that move, but it is comparable to what we saw in December for the old Santa rally, which was a corrective rally, to be fair. Of course, that doesn't mean that this one will be as well. But do keep in mind that Bitcoin will have potential hidden bearish divergence, present here as long as we're below those major levels. So with that in mind, while I do think that there still is very likely continuation on this upside, I just want to point out potentially down the road in the next 2-3 weeks, if we don't see Bitcoin really overtake those levels, that might be the next sort of warning signal. Just an early preparation for such things. But for right now, things are looking good. Again, expanding volatility off the lows alongside a fresh jewel signal. So we certainly did get the cyan color now. That is excellent. That is exactly what we want to be seeing. So I do look at this move as very, 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 very likely to continue onwards and upwards. Again, next sort of targeted region, basically somewhere between about 43.5, let's say, to 44.5. We also do see, I believe, over here on our stochastic momentum. We can obviously come back and catch up on the 5-day, but the daily, of course, remained to the upside as well. That was a big key as well in yesterday's analysis. Remember when Bitcoin came down exactly to, it's actually the day prior, where Bitcoin came exactly down to that $36,000 region. And had a spike low there, and that was exactly where the momentum on the daily would have turned around, but it did hold. And so this is now continuing onwards and upwards, which is excellent, at least for the blue laws right now. And well, that will be remaining with upside momentum as long as Bitcoin is closing above 37,535. Let's also go check out the short-term timeframes over here, see if it's a little more likely to pull back over the weekend or not. I would say a pullback over the weekend would look a lot better for the week to come, just personally speaking. Anyways, 4-hour stochastic momentum will actually turn down below 39,790. 2-hour stochastic momentum will be turning down, or will it be doing anything? Let's see. It won't be loading is what it won't be doing. 41,850 is the magical number, so currently below there right now. And hourly probably also a little bit more on the corrective side. So let's see if we can load it. Come on, internet. There we go. Yeah, it is coming down below 41,830 as well. And then the 6-hour we were also watching yesterday, which had a big signal coming off the lows. Yep. And that is getting a significant follow through on increasing volatility. So that is excellent. So now I want to follow up on this 5-day signal and kind of talk about the potential severity of what we're looking at, as this is still very much relevant. This is something that we called out about, I guess this was 2 weeks ago when it got confirmed. Now we've seen follow through for it. And of course, I just want to take a second to talk about, what to expect on a 5-day signal as far as time goes. It's usually going to take at least, 5 to 10 days for it to get even like the first move. And from there, as we're going to go over in a second here, historically speaking, it takes quite a fair time. So a lot of patience is very much required for these. The reason why I'm saying this is because I posted this on Twitter. Yes, I do post on Twitter sometimes, and actually got a lot of shit for it. I understand, people, I'll post a signal like this, and then it doesn't play out immediately, and then people go like, "Hey, man, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? It doesn't play out? Bullshit! Stupid TA!" It's like, okay, or full fair enough, but understand that a 5-day, you're still looking probably like, somewhere between about 5 and 15 days to look for like the initial etchings of a signal anyways. So in this case, we do see that the next closure that we got last night actually does remain with upside momentum, as long as Bitcoin's now above, even $35,000, and it's been building up significantly. So we've gotten this same signal coming down to this particular level as identified by this green horizontal bar at about 8.6. Only 4 times in Bitcoin's past, not including the one that we currently have. And that was these 4 right here. 3 of those 4 were actually macro cycle lows. That would be your, of course, starting off over here on October 2011 lows. And do note that it did actually come back down and test around those lows again, about a month later, actually. And even from there, while it did have a nice move up, still spent about like half or around a year actually going sideways before the real move did start to occur, and then even like another year sideways right here as well, to be fair. But that was a rippled price of about $2.50 before going to $1,200, which is not a bad trade, you might say. The next macro cycle low that we did see off of the same indicator was right here. So I actually have it right there, from January of 2015. And again, things were pretty damn sluggish, trading in a box range here for the next year, about from January 2015, even retesting it in August 2015. And then from there, it did take, basically a full year for it to really get going. off those lows. And then the most recent one was December 2018 right here. This one was yet again on the macro cycle low. Took about 3 months for Bitcoin to really get going. Even came back down and retested somewhat around it in the flu dump in March 2020 as well. And the one time where it did not work out as a macro cycle low was right here. This was a bull trap in October 2014. It was still a pretty damn impressive move, if I do say so myself, from a wick to wick basis, over 70% on a closing basis, about 17 to 20% or so. But yeah, it did eventually fall over. So that is also, something relevant to prepare for if we do start to see some weakness below those critical regions. So with this in mind right here, I do look at this as a really, really good signal. We got a very good signal on the sort of experimental indicator that I'm playing with over here as well. Actually, both of them kind of firing, or this one should fire off a little bit earlier, this one firing off a little bit later, but both of them in unison is great to see. And I'm actually just curious if we did see the same thing on the experiment, or sorry, on the one that failed over here. Yeah, we actually kind of not. Hard to make much out of that. But ultimately, where we start to confirm this as a macro cycle low? Well, in this case, I'm going to go back to this chart here, and I think I have it on this chart. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's right here. So we've been drawing out this potential wave for price action for a while now, and we'll also talk about invalidation here soon enough. But basically, it is this. So now that we've gotten the move off the lows, very likely we do see a move somewhere around the 0.5, which is, basically around that $44,500 target or so, something like this. And then the real question is, does Bitcoin show any weakness specifically between the 618, and let me just get rid of this, the 618 and the 0.5 Fibonacci retracements, which is basically between about 50,000 and 45,000. If we see something like this, which we probably will see something like this initially, the real question is what happens after that when Bitcoin comes back down and maybe even bases as far low as about $41,000. If we see that Bitcoin bounces here and specifically gets back above the $50,000 level, closes a daily above there, I'd feel very comfortable and confident saying that the corrective 50% crash to the downside is over, and we start to talk about big moves up towards $60,000 plus over time. Obviously, this is all not going to happen on the same day, but over the course of like the next year or so. And then the doomium, which you don't want to see if you want to be bullish, is very likely a bounce here, and then another lower high somewhere below $50,000, something like this, and then maybe a series of bounces around that $40,000 or $41,000 level, and then eventually breaking below it. Breaking below it would make me very likely look for another run at the lows, similar to what we saw in 2015, and then we get to play the game of do the lows hold or not. But for right now, this does look quite good. At least for continuation, probably into next week. I wouldn't necessarily be personally looking for it over the weekend, but fair enough. We do see that CME also closed the weekly yesterday as well, and it had a pretty good reversal closure right here. So I do look at this as likely to trade higher. And we also do have a drive of hidden bullish divergence as populated by the by Caretaker's RSI here. Keep in mind this would not be like your classic way of doing it, but we call this a phantom drive. And like I was very skeptical when I first saw these things because they're not like the classic way of identifying it, but I've backtested them, and they actually do have a good enough hit rate in general. It depends on the time frame, but they have a good enough hit rate for me to call them out. And yeah, this one would qualify as a pretty good drive right there. And those technically will have a target, in this case, basically just shy of about $50,000 overall. And then we come back to it. But for right now, I do feel inclined to call that out simply because we already have the weekly closure for CME. This is not trading any longer. This is the closure. Very, very likely trades up towards, at least 44,500. And then we get to play the game of, where things stop from there. All right, so let's talk about invalidations really quickly here, because obviously, weird things do happen, and always need to have some sort of a plan if and when things do turn against. And in this case, it's actually quite simple. Any sort of a daily closure below about 39,300 or so would do it for me. On a full hour, we could use the same area that we used for the breakout to the upside yesterday. That would be on the trap area of at about 38,000. As long as Bitcoin's closing above there, I look at this as very likely to just trade sideways and up from here. Doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't come back down, in the short term here and maybe play at another higher low somewhere around 39.3. In fact, I'd actually quite like that myself. But I would look at that as a base scenario for the daily specifically, and then about just above 38,000 for the 4 hour in this case, as 4 hour is starting to get quite high here on 4 hour BBWP. But 4 hour RSI is, fine. Probably going to see a bit of a short-term corrected move, I imagine. But ultimately, also based off stochastic momentum. But ultimately, I do think that Bitcoin's kind of picked its direction for the next little bit here, might we say. Also, the 2-day, which is closing tonight, dancing around the 21. Again, any sort of a closure over there, I do look at that as very likely to initiate the next leg up, perhaps over the next week or two, somewhere around about $44,500 to $45,000. Again, there's going to be ebbs and flows as always, but that was a nice little trap move. I think that was kind of like that was the real star yesterday, the trap move, and now we just kind of get to follow it, assuming invalidations are met. Okay, cool. So I think that's a good place for me to shut this one off. Nice and short and sweet. I'm gonna go eat a shit ton of food because I'm massively hungry. And with that said, take care. Hope this one serves you well, and see you hopefully very soon.